that there is reason and good reasons to be disillusioned. Mm-hmm. I guess all I'm pushing back on is that second step of it's always going to be this way.
Right. It doesn't have to be this way.
That is the key step.
Right.
So I'm
That's
not on.
because you need to run for president. It's 'cause you
Yeah.
We need someone who's actually a good person.
Well,
because the Democrats have very few candidates that are.
Can I actually push back on that?
Please.
Because we were talking about how politics has become a religion.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the ways it does, is people put all their faith in a politician.
No, but I'm not saying that.
I've seen it with Bernie.
Yes.
People, and I like Bernie a whole lot, but some people treat him as if he's a messianic figure.
Well, because he's
Trump,
one of the
Trump
only
on the right,
ones,
people treat him as a messiah in some ways. Like,
Bernie's
this is a problem.
One of the only ones that's been remarkably consistent in his entire career.
I know.
And so
but he's still a flawed human being, right? I mean, just like we all are.
Rare. It's so rare.
I know, but my point is
that should be praised.
But instead of like the change is going to come from your listeners.
Yes.
Not from me. Right? I can be a part of that. But I mean, if there's any hope I can give people, it's that the people in power, including the billionaire mega donors who basically run this whole thing, and I can get more into that if you want.
Please do.
But they are very afraid of the power that the people have. That I know for sure.
How so? Because
they spend so much time. Let's talk about the two billionaires that I think basically control state government here in Texas. And I don't know if you or even your listeners necessarily know about them. It's two billionaires from West Texas. Their names are Tim Dunn and Ferris Wilks. Dunn and Wilks. They made their money in oil and gas.
Like a country music band.
I was just going to say, some people get them confused with Brooks and Dunn. Wilks and Dunn is the bad one. Brooks and Dunn, good one. But they made their money in oil and gas, but they are also Christian nationalist pastors.
Oh.
Which, billionaire pastor, you would think that's an oxymoron. But on Sunday mornings, these two billionaires, they preach at these far-right churches, and they've got very extreme views. They don't think anybody who's not a Christian should serve an elected office.
Whoa.
In fact, you can look this up. Don't take my word for it. Do your own research. But they told the former Republican Speaker of the Texas House, a guy named Joe Strauss from San Antonio, that he didn't have a right to be Speaker because he's Jewish. And that's a Republican. So they are dominionists, they're Christian nationalists, this is the world that they have. But they basically, every single Republican state senator in Texas has taken their money. Every single one. A majority of the Republicans in the state house have taken their money. And for some of those lawmakers, a majority of their total campaign contributions come from just these two guys. Like they increasingly run this whole government here in Texas. Mm. And you ask where the Ten Commandments bill comes from. You ask where that school counselor chaplain bill comes from, the voucher bill, the abortion ban. A lot of this is driven by these two billionaires.
That's wild.
And they give to politicians, but it's actually much bigger than that because they have this sprawling network of think tanks, advocacy organizations, media outlets, the Daily Wire, right, funded by them. So like they are creating an empire to control every aspect of the state. I mean, I don't mean to sound alarmist, but that's what's happening. And again, your listeners should do their own research on this to learn about it. But there's been a lot of stories about these two billionaires and their control over state government. And I say this because... But
a big part of the Daily Wire is Ben Shapiro, and Ben Shapiro's very Jewish.
Well, and these two billionaires hosted a meeting with Nick Fuentes, who is a Holocaust denier, and
He's
got a lot of pushback.
He's a Holocaust denier?
Nick Fuentes?
He's a denier,
yes.
Or does he debate the numbers?
Well, to be fair, I don't listen to a lot of Nick Fuentes, which is on me, but...
who funds it? Duo serves, yep. Dan and Ferris Wilks, Daily Wire was launched in 2015. Billionaire Petroleum Industry Brothers.
And again, I think the important part about these two guys, it's maybe more important than the oil and gas stuff, is that they have this extreme religious worldview. And they have the money to be able to actually implement that worldview on 30 million people in the state of Texas. And now they're trying to go national by trying to win a U.S. Senate seat. So, I mean, if your listeners haven't heard of Tim Dunn and Ferris Wilks, they need to. One, because not only do they make policy increasingly for 30 million Texans, but now they're trying to go national and a lot of their views and a lot of their politics are going to become nationalized.
Yeah, I interrupted you when you were talking about Nick Fuentes. So what were you trying to say?
My point was that Dunn and Wilkes and I've probably become the most outspoken critic of these guys, because I do think people need to know their names, right? You open up your social media feed, you listen to the news, and you hear about Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick or even James Tallarico, but you don't actually hear about the two guys who run the whole thing. So, but my point is that they spend so much of their energy and their money and their time trying to create wedges between people. So let's just take schools for instance. The centerpiece of their agenda was this school voucher bill, which you probably heard about, which is basically taking money that would go to neighborhood public schools and sending that money to religious private schools. Those who are around Dunn and Wilkes say that their ultimate vision is to replace public schooling with religious schooling for everyone. That's what they're trying to get to. Yes.
Wow.
And so, but they know that Texans love their public schools, right? Like, I mean, public education is enshrined in our state's constitution. Friday night lights in a lot of these small towns, the school is not just an academic institution. It is the community hub that brings people together. So if Dunn and Wilkes want to get rid of public education, which I think they do, and I think the journalism bears this out, they've got to drive a wedge between people in their public school community. And so they deliberately fund a lot of the book stuff, a lot of the cultural stuff, the craziness at school boards. A lot of that is kind of funded and organized through the Dunn and Wilkes empire. Of course, people should go to the school board if they have an authentic problem with the school district, which that happens a lot. But when you actually look into when you follow the money about who's getting the people to show up, who is distributing the information, who is riling people up about some of this stuff and undermining trust in public education, it's often Dunn and Wilkes, and it is in pursuit of this policy goal, which is to defund and close neighborhood schools. We've already seen schools close all over the state of Texas because they're being systematically underfunded. So I use this as an example. There are valid critiques of public schools, don't get me wrong, and I've made those critiques myself. But when you look at where the money's coming from and the fact that it is intentionally drawing a wedge or putting a wedge between people and undermining trust in education so that they can privatize it and profit off of it, I think that whole story needs to be recognized so people can understand how the left versus right stuff is actually not as important as the top versus bottom stuff.
Yeah.
That these billionaires we're not going to have public schools. That a lot of, there's no way I'd be on Joe Rogan right now if I hadn't had Texas public schools. Because my mom didn't go to college. The only way I got to college is because of public schools. Free, high quality public schools, period. And I think there's a lot of people who would say the same thing. And
but you were
these
saying
two guys
they're
are trying to get rid of them.
terrified of.
Yes, because what they're worried about is, and I'll take the voucher fight in particular, we almost beat this voucher bill because it was a coalition of Democrats in urban and suburban areas and then rural small town Republicans coming together because we all benefit from public schools, right? We set aside our party differences, even some of our ideological differences, and we said, we all need well-funded public schools that can actually give our kids the opportunities they deserve. That coalition was not only a threat to Greg Abbott or Dan Patrick, it was a threat to Dunn and Wilkes. Because if we recognize that we have far more in common than the stuff that divides us, then that's a threat to their power. It's a threat to their wealth. That unity, that loving your enemy is not just morally good. It's not just idealistic. It is good strategic advice. Because when we're united, when we're together, then we make it a lot harder for those two guys to come in and dismantle these ladders of opportunity that we have. And we have fewer and fewer ladders of opportunity. Public schools are one of them. So I think this is a prime example of what I mean when I say a lot of the divisions, a lot of the platforms that are dividing us, that are run by billionaires, all of that is intentional so that we are fighting each other instead of asking hard questions about the wealthy special interests and what their agenda is. That is just the phenomenon that I have seen in my 4 terms. And I don't know if everyone is fully awake to that we're getting played.
I don't think people are, and I think you saying it is very important. I think most people are unaware of it.
Well, and how would they know?
How would
right?
they know?
I mean, they're
Yeah.
not, and this is a problem with media. Like the mainstream media, for some reason, will not name these two guys. Right? It's probably, I think it's like this gentleman's agreement, or like you have to talk about the elected officials. I'm like, it doesn't matter who the elected officials are if these billionaires buy whoever's elected. Right? I mean, this to me is the real story. And I honestly don't, there are some outlets that are covering it, but just most of them don't. I'll even bring them up in an interview, like on local news, it'll get taken out of the interview.
Really?
Yeah. Because they don't want the lawsuits. I get it. They don't want the attention. I even put a video on TikTok explaining Dunn & Wilkes, and it was like the TikTok was getting a lot of engagement, then it stopped all of a sudden. And I think it was because the algorithm, or the I don't know how it works, but the platform itself had decided to stop the video from spreading.
Wow.
So, I mean, that is, I just do think people have to, your listeners, who maybe some of them are sick of politics, they think it's all corrupt, that is all true, I validate that. But until you educate yourself, until you do dig a little deeper, until you recognize the way this system is operating, you're not going to have the tools and the knowledge you need to upend that system, which it can absolutely be upended. We almost beat their voucher bill because we had that coalition of across the aisle and scattering the tribal dynamics of our politics. So ultimately we didn't win, kind of came down to a photo finish, but it did to me provide a template for what happens if we actually loved our enemies, if we rebuilt these relationships. Like, who could we take on if we did it together? Democrats and Republicans, conservatives and progressives. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I sound a little Pollyanna.
No,
but,
I think you're onto something. I think what you're saying is absolutely true, though, that it's not us versus them. It's the top versus the bottom.
They have all the power.
Yeah.
And it
seems like they enjoy wielding it.
For their own benefit.
And what's their ultimate goal?
I think if I'm taking the journalism that's been done on Dunn & Wilkes, I think their ultimate goal is a theocracy. And again, this is very personal, given how important my faith is to me, but I'm a Christian, and I think there is no more dangerous form of government than theocracy. Because the only thing worse than a tyrant is a tyrant who thinks they're on a mission from God.
We haven't had any good examples of that in the past.
No.
There's not one that you go, well, that one worked out.
Right. And so this is people trying to use my religion to control people.
Yeah.
That's the name of the game. And we're seeing that here. I mean, I'm an 8th generation Texan. My family's been here since it was Mexico. I love this state. But I've just seen people like Dunn & Wilkes just take us in this far right culture war direction at the expense of actual problems we need to solve. One of the bills that didn't pass last legislative session was a bill that would have provided funding for flood mitigation and emergency systems to get the word out when there's a flood. And we literally just saw the consequence of not passing that bill over the weekend.
Why would they not want that passed? That seems like...
You want to know? Okay, we're talking. Yeah. We're honestly here. Okay, that bill was passed by Representative Ken King, a Republican, someone I often have disagreements with, but he's a good man. He's from far north Panhandle, where they saw historic wildfires last year. So he put this bill that would have addressed wildfires, also flooding, and would have, I think, saved some of the lives in the Hill Country over the weekend during those catastrophic floods. That bill passed the state house, the lower chamber that I'm in, on a bipartisan basis. Overwhelmingly, Democrats and Republicans said, this is good policy, let's pass it. Dan Patrick, the lieutenant governor, who controls the state Senate, which is the upper chamber, he held that bill hostage so that he could get his THC ban through. And again, I know this may be confusing people outside of Texas. We legalized hemp a few years ago. It's a booming industry. It's a product that's providing people a lot of relief. Dan Patrick decided to put this bill forward that would ban all THC products in the state of Texas, basically close hundreds of businesses across the state, lay off thousands of people.
Why do you think you do that?
Let's go back, follow the money.
Okay.
What industry do you think was most invested in taking this new product off the market?
Pharmaceutical drugs?
No.
Alcohol?
Big alcohol. Big beer. And I guess I love beer. This is not a critique of them. My point is they use their influence to take a competitor out of the market. By the way, a competitor that is research suggests is safer and less addictive than alcohol. Again, I'm not disparaging alcohol, but it has a lot of negative side effects and a lot of negative, and is very addictive. And I have members of my family who struggle with addiction and struggle with alcoholism. THC can be, under the right circumstances, an alternative. I mean, there are seniors who use it for chronic pain. There are veterans who use it for PTSD. There are just Texans with anxiety who use it to chill out at the end of a long, stressful day. And so the fact that the lieutenant governor, one, would do the bidding of one industry over the other, two, would hold up literally a life-saving bill that could have possibly saved lives over the weekend in those floods, just to cater to wealthy special interests, to me is just an encapsulation of everything that's wrong with politics, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I would agree with that.
So that's the kind of, when I told you my second term I started to feel discouraged, that's the stuff. Because you just walk, I mean, politicians are still people. Like I walk out of that chamber just feeling totally and utterly defeated, right? Like I feel like I'm pushing against the ocean sometimes.
Yeah.
And people are going to suffer with this THC ban if it goes into place. Needlessly.
It's foolish. It's
Insane.
really foolish, and it's not the direction the country's going. The country's going towards legalization, which it should, and then also taxing.
Yeah.
It would be a tremendous tax benefit to everybody, a tremendous revenue benefit to the state.
And regulation. I'm open. I actually voted for a regulation bill, right? We shouldn't have smoke shops right next to schools.
Right.
The packaging shouldn't look like kids' candy. I'm all for that.
Pesticides, herbicides, toxic chemicals
all that
are
is
being used
right.
on them, and yeah.
But to do a total draconian ban, again, there's the thing with abortion.
And it's just
right? Like,
for the alcohol industry. That's fascinating.
Again, all I do is follow the money. I don't.
Yes.
Again, I don't want to cast aspersions. It's not like the lieutenant governor said, "I'm just doing this for the alcohol industry."
Of course.
I'm reading the tea leaves, and especially when a policy doesn't make sense.
Right.
That's when I ask questions.
Right.
Right. When you're just like, because they'll be like, well, too many kids are getting these products. Well, okay, let's pass a reform bill where we keep it out of the hands of kids. What?
By the way, kids have been getting weed since the beginning of time.
I mean,
Shut
that's
up.
also true.
It's stupid.
Well, I mean, this is the whole
But
thing
it's
about
not killing them.
This is the whole thing. I want to say this. I never thought when I got elected to the state legislature I would talk so much about sex. There are so many weird bills about pornography. There was a bill about dildos, which I can't believe I even said that on this podcast. But
what's the bill about dildos?
I think it's a bill regulating where dildos can be in like a store. Anyway, like I've heard a lot of things from my constituents, healthcare, crime, education. I've literally never had a constituent reach out about dildos, but my colleagues feel the need to pass bills about this stuff. So I end up being in a weird position where I'm having to talk about some of these issues, like this issue of pornography, which has been used to do book banning. And it's an interesting discussion that we should get into. But the idea that teenagers are going to the school library for their pornography, again, just kind of, it's common sense that I feel like sometimes we're just completely lacking in places like the Capitol.
Well, listen, James, I really appreciate you coming on here because you're providing a perspective that I think is very difficult to acquire. I don't think most people have any idea how the system actually works. And the fact that you're willing to do this and to speak so frankly and so well about this and really explain it to us in a way that's digestible, I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. This is a special platform you've created here, and it really is an opportunity, I think, to love our enemies again. And so I just couldn't be prouder to be invited on.
My pleasure. So let's do it again sometime.
I'd love to.
Don't quit, okay?
Yes,
Stay
sir.
in there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Bye, everybody.